Hey guys, what's going on? It's GMT and welcome back to Night Fix. See what I did there? Because the game's called Daybreak and I reversed the words, so it's Night Fix. It's kind of funny.
Oh, shut up! You're so annoying!
Top tier comedy on the JMT channel. It's okay, guys. Clap it up. You're not clapping it up?
Do I need to bring out the pan?
Guys, welcome back to Daybreak. Today, we're going to be going over all of the killers inside of the game. Thanks for all the support again on the Survivor video that we did. I had a lot of people in the comments go ahead and update me on some of the things that I may have mentioned wrong, especially about the Valerie Survivor. What the description of that Survivor actually meant is that if there are two Valeries in the game and they both use their abilities, then it wouldn't stack like that. So thank you guys for helping me fix that issue. And now let's move on into the killers of Daybreak. So we don't have as many killers as we do Survivor, and it's for a very good reason, okay? It's very hard to think of killers in these types of games, so props to them for having, you know, still a wide arrangement of killers here to actually go ahead and choose from. So for all of these killers, it looks like they only have two statistics to go ahead and actually look at here, but let's go ahead and start with the slasher. So they both have a passive ability and an active ability. A passive ability is one that is just there while you're playing as the killer, but the active ability is a button that you have to actually press to be able to use that ability. So with the slasher, his passive ability is called Bloodlust. So downing a survivor will temporarily decrease the slasher's attack recovery time, and this is stackable. So every single time that you down a survivor, it temporarily will decrease your attack recovery time, making sure that you can actually swing more. And with the throwing knife, which is his active ability, the slasher can throw a knife that will down the first survivor that it hits, and successfully hitting this knife will half its cooldown. So if you do throw it and you end up missing a survivor, you do have to wait that entire cooldown period to be able to use this ability again. However, if you do throw it and you hit a survivor, then hey, not only do you down them, but it will half your cooldown to be able to use that ability again. So the slasher is the main person that you get inside the game, and I heard this is actually a pretty good killer to go ahead and use in the game, even though it's the first killer that you get. And for the statistics, let's just go ahead and give a brief little description of what they mean. Speed, obviously, is how fast a slasher can actually run, because there is no sprinting for slashers, you're just walking, but that's their speed, I guess. And then the fear size radius is the proximity around the slasher that will make other survivors hear you coming. So let's say if a survivor is in your fear size radius, then they can hear music around you, and it lets them know that the killer is close to them. So having a fear size radius decrease is better for the killer. So that's what that means. Let's move on to the next killer here, called the Host. So the passive ability is called Icy Touch. Downing a survivor will chill them and cause them to crawl much slower. So every time that you down a survivor using the Host, it looks like they will just crawl slower because they'll have that chill effect on them. And then for the active ability, the Host has Ice Trap. So the Host will plant an ice trap, and then survivors who walk over that trap will be frozen, and it actually alerts the Host. Survivors will thaw after 5 seconds, and the Host can only have 8 traps active at a time. So the Host will be able to place 8 traps around the map, and if a survivor happens to step into that ice trap, then they will be stuck for 5 seconds, and the killer, the Host here, will be notified that you're stuck. So it kind of leads them to that location. So it's kind of like just placing a trap. And then their speed is about halfway on this one, and the fear size radius I think is the same as the slasher here. The Imaginary Friends. This one looked very interesting to me when I first played the game, because I just saw that there was like a group of them. But for the passive ability for the Imaginary Friends, it is called Fading Memories. When the imaginary... Is my mic on? When the Imaginary Friends down someone, if the survivor is affected with the plaything, the survivor is taken to a random spot on the outskirts of the map and has their aura hidden. So if the survivor is affected with plaything, I think plaything might be what the Imaginary Friends give off. So every time the Imaginary Friends actually down someone, if the survivor is affected with that plaything ability, then it looks like the survivor will be taken to a random spot, and then their aura will be hidden as well, so they just get thrown around all over the place. I think plaything, though, is what you give to a survivor if you hit them.
You're a idiot.
And then for their active ability, it is called Forget Me Not. The Imaginary Friends can swing their parasol in a circle to emit a large burst of energy, and then survivors who are hit by this burst are slowed and have plaything applied to them. So maybe, JMT, if you kept reading the description, you would understand what plaything is. So if you use the active ability for the Imaginary Friends and you hit someone with that large burst of energy, then the survivor will be hit with the plaything, and they will also be slowed as well. And then with the passive ability, ability. If you down someone that was hit with the plaything, it will send them to a random spot in the map. So that's what that means. Very interesting indeed. The fear size radius, by the way, is actually very decreased for the imaginary friends here. So you shouldn't be able to hear them coming as you would with the host and the slasher so far. The next killer we have is the ghost. And I actually saw quite a bit of people using this killer when I first started. So we'll see here. The fear size radius is decreased from the slasher, but not the imaginary friends. And then the speed is actually pretty far up. So the passive ability for the ghost is called Sixth Sense. Sixth Sense, that's a tongue twister, sort of. When a survivor picks up another survivor, Kiara can briefly see their auras after a short delay. So every time a survivor actually picks up a survivor from them being downed, then the ghost can see the auras for a little bit on those two survivors. But it only lasts for a short duration. And then for the active ability, the ghost has Blood Phase. Kiara will vanish into a puddle of blood, becoming invisible and moving at an increased speed. When the ability is reactivated, she will phase out of the blood and after a brief, won't be able to attack. So Blood Phase is kind of like teleporting, but not really. Basically, you become invisible, you can move around the map with increased speed, and then let's say if you do meet up with a survivor, if you activate the ability again, you can come out of the Blood Phase, but then you can't attack for a little duration. It's kind of like disappearing and then being able to move around the map faster. That's kind of what Blood Phase is like. So maybe that's why people like to use this killer a lot, because it gets to go ahead and rotate faster than other killers. Maybe that's why. But anyways, that is the ghost. Next we have... Man, these names are going to get me. I know the name is Nadia, but what the heck is this? I am not a walking dictionary. So the fear size radius is actually the same as the it is not. This is the biggest fear size radius so far that I've seen for a killer, and the speed is very decreased as well. So their passive ability is called Abstraction. We're going to call him V, or just Nadia. So Nadia does not have a heartbeat. Instead, survivors in the terror radius will have their world distorted, and then Nadia will also gain increased vision. So maybe that's why the fear size radius is up so much, because instead of having a heartbeat, people who are in that fear size radius, it looks like, will have like a distorted vision of somehow. But for Nadia, if survivors are in that, then she will have increased vision. So it kind of helps her locate survivors that are in her terror radius. And then for the active ability, it is called the Perfect Frame. So Nadia can block nearby vaults with abstract art, and survivors cannot go through these blocked vaults. So that does help out for looping quite a bit. So that is Nadia. Next we have the Idol. His fear size radius is down here as well, and the speed's about half. So the passive ability for the Idol is called Fast Footwork. When vaulting and recovering from attacks, the Idol's exhaustion timer is halved. Alongside this, survivors who are his obsession will have their terror radius halved, and a slow is applied to their repair speed. I think the repair speed is kind of talking about fixing generators. That's what that must mean. So whenever the Idol here goes ahead and vaults or recovers from attacks, what they mean by that is after you swing, you do have a little bit of time to go ahead and be able to swing again. So after you vault or do that, your timer is actually halved to go ahead and be able to do that again. So at the start of the round, it looks like one survivor will be picked the obsession, and whoever the Idol has an obsession over, the terror radius will actually be halved of that. And then they'll also be slow as well to go ahead and fix generators. A lot to do here with the passive of Idol. Fast footwork for this passive actually seems like a pretty good passive, so I'm liking the Idol so far. And then for the active ability, it is called Eyes on the Prize. The Idol can mark a random survivor as his obsession. So you got to use the ability, I think, to go ahead and actually make someone the obsession. And then if you down that person with obsession, it will make them start with a 75% bleed rate instead of 100. And then if the obsession is on their last life, the Idol will gain a temporary movement speed increase instead. And what they mean by last life is, I think if you down someone 3 times, then they actually die. They can't go ahead and be picked up in the game, because you could get knocked down, picked up, knocked down, picked up. But then if you get knocked down for a 3rd time, I think that's your last life. I think that's when you die. So if the obsession is on their last life, the Idol here will get a movement speed increase because they'll be dead. There's no use for a bleed out rate. So the Idol here looks like someone that I probably go ahead and use. I think I'll like the Idol. And the next killer we have here is called the Werewolf, and their fear size radius is like over half, and their speed is about halfway as well. So their passive is called the Hunt. When detecting survivors, their werewolf will slightly slow them, and then alongside this, it will reveal them for longer. So additionally, the werewolf's detect cooldown is slightly less than other killers. So the werewolf will be able to detect more than other killers, and when he does detect, it will slow survivors slightly, so it'll slow them a little bit, and then it will also reveal them for a longer duration. So the Hunt passive is all about helping out the detection for this killer. And then for the active ability, it is called Feral Rage. For this active ability, the werewolf becomes temporarily enraged and allowing him to move faster and vault with a very small slow penalty. So whenever he activates his ability, the werewolf will be raged, become enraged, and then he'll move faster and he'll be able to vault quicker. So this is literally like a tracking down slasher, okay? Your passive is all about actually finding people, and then once you do find someone, you can activate the ability to go ahead and actually help you in chasing down the survivor faster and to be able to kill them at a faster rate. So that's what the werewolf is all about, but the downside is you just have a bigger fear radius compared to the other killers here. The next killer is called the CYBORG. Their fear size radius is pretty low, and their speed is over half. The passive for the CYBORG is called automation. When the CYBORG kicks a generator, then the gen regresses much faster and it takes less time to oh, I didn't see the and there. Okay, I'm kind of stupid. So every time that the CYBORG here actually goes ahead and kicks a generator, it'll take less time to kick it again, and the gen regress will be much faster. And then the CYBORG also makes skill checks harder for everyone as well. Even if the generator is not kicked as his passive, it'll just make skill checks harder for everyone at the start of the game. And then his active ability is called Technological Eye. The CYBORG can briefly reveal the amount of players working on all generators in the map. So this is going to be like a generator controlled killer. The CYBORG's passive and active is pretty much all about finding where people are at generators and just destroying generator progress as well. So that's pretty much what the CYBORG is all about here. I definitely want to try out all these killers to see how they actually work, but this seems like a generator type killer, a generator control player, killer, man, robot. And the next killer we have here is called the Warden, and holy lord, that fear size radius. So you're going to be able to hear this guy coming way earlier than you would with the other killers here, of course, and the speed's about halved. So the passive ability here for the Warden is called Intuition. When a survivor gets off of a generator or is detected, they leave behind a trail of sparks that dies down after a few seconds. And then additionally, the Warden's detect cooldown is slightly less than other killers. So the Warden's detection cooldown will be less than other killers, and whenever a survivor gets detected or gets off of a generator, they'll leave behind like this little trail of sparks. It won't be like right from where they got off a gen or where they're detected, because it starts to die down after a few seconds. I'm gonna guess 3 to 5 seconds, but it should help you actually finding where people are if you are like hunting them down. So that is the passive for the Warden. And then their active ability is called Galvanized Shock. The Warden can fire out a blast of concentrated energy, which will heavily slow the survivor hit. Then we have the two new killers here that recently just came out last week. So this one is called the Stalker. Their fear size radius is pretty much normal. Yeah, it's about this. It's the same as the Stalker, so it's pretty much normal. And the speed is about halfway or a little bit over halfway. And their passive is called Seek. So when the Stalker has no survivors in their terror radius, she will gain an increased movement speed. And then alongside this, the Stalker will have silenced footsteps at all times. So you won't be able to hear this killer coming after you if you're just focusing on the footstep aspect of it, because the Stalker will have silenced footsteps the entire time of the game. And then if no one is in the Stalker's fear radius, she will have increased movement speed, being able to go ahead and actually reach survivors faster. And then the active ability for the Stalker is called Hide. The Stalker can crouch just like survivors can, and when the Stalker is crouched, her terror light is hidden and the terror radius is halved. Her light is not hidden if she is too close to a downed survivor though. And then the Stalker crouches faster than most survivors and can attack while crouched. However, attacking while crouched will not grant her a lunge. A bunch to say here and the active ability for the Stalker, but it looks like this. So this is probably the only killer that can actually crouch just like the survivors. And whenever the Stalker actually is crouched, the terror light will be hidden, so they won't be able to see the red glow around the killer. And then the terror radius, which is right here, will be halved, so about right where my mouse is. However, if you are near a downed survivor, like if you're too close to them, they can still see your light. And then the Stalker can crouch faster than most survivors, and she can attack while crouched as well. However, if you do attack while you're crouched, it won't grant you a lunge. So that is the Stalker. And the last killer here to go over is called the Polluted, and the fear size radius is up there just as much as the Warden almost. The Warden has a little bit more, but the Polluted is just right behind him in second place. And the speed is about halfway on the Polluted killer here. So the passive ability is called Corruption Consumes. So whenever the Polluted vaults, he will leave behind a trail of oil, and that will actually slow survivors who vault. And this will fade away after 30 seconds and only activates every 45 seconds. Alongside this, when the Polluted kicks a generator, he covers it in oil, and that will actually slow the progression of survivors who are working on it. And the oil will fade away after 60 seconds. So with this passive ability, Corruption Consumes, pretty much every 45 seconds, the Polluted killer here will leave behind a trail of oil, and every time a survivor actually vaults in that trail of oil, then they will become slowed. I think this works for either vaulting or just walking into that oil as well. They'll become slowed, and then after 30 seconds it'll go away. So it looks like a 15-second window. And the active ability for the Polluted is called Oil Trail. The Polluted begins to drip oil from his hands, leaving behind a path wrath that will slow survivors who step over it. When a survivor steps on a puddle, they are corrupted with pollution, and pollution will fade away after 30 seconds. And when an infected survivor is downed, the duration of this ability is increased. Holy Lord, another long explanation here, but let's break it down. So whenever you use the ability for the polluted here, oil trail will begin. So therefore you'll leave behind a trail of oil, and every time a survivor will step into that puddle, they'll get polluted. So not only will they be polluted, but I think it'll slow them as well, and then this will fade away after 30 seconds. But however, if a survivor is infected with pollution and they get downed, then the duration of the oil trail ability will be increased, so it'll last longer. So pretty much if you find a bunch of people in a house and you're just infecting everyone and downing people, this polluted ability could actually last for a pretty long time. But that is the oil trail, and that is the polluted killer in general. So guys, that's pretty much all of the killers in Daybreak so far. Let me know you guys' opinions in the comments down below on these killers and what killers you think could come up next inside of the game. And if there's anything that I did say wrong, because I feel like some of the descriptions for some of these killers might not be explained well enough for other people to understand as well, but I did try my best. But anyways guys, that's gonna be it for me. My name's GMT, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out, guys.